Just in via Star Drive at Columba Zeta, it's the DigiGods. Now please welcome two kids from a trailer park, and if that's what they think, then that's all they'll ever be, Wade Major and Mark Kaiser.
Oh, Corey, who could possibly think so little of us that they would say such a horrible, cruel thing?
That was sent in by John Lusty. Insert your own joke.
You got one back on John. Johnny got one back on you. That Corey. Let me guess. This week you had a metal guitarist.
Heavy metal guitarist?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I'm never going to be able to quit my job. It is never going to happen. 4:30 in the morning starting next week. 4:30.
Nice.
In the morning.
Yeah. Well.
I didn't even know there was a 4:30 in the morning. I thought it was only an afternoon thing. Turns out there's a 4:30 in the morning.
Let's do this. Since that's about when I usually go to bed, I'll wake you up. I'll give you a wake-up call.
You go to bed at 4:30 in the morning?
Actually, I usually go to bed at about 2:30.
Why is that? What are you doing?
I'm writing.
What are you writing?
I'm writing, man. I'm
checks? What are you writing?
No, I'm writing things. I'm working at
suicide notes. What are you writing?
Yeah, I'm writing at 2:30. I got things. I write.
So when do you wake up?
7.
So you need 5 hours of sleep.
Well, no, I need about 10, but I get 5 hours of sleep.
Well, 7 because you have a daughter.
Yeah.
And then when everyone goes to sleep, you're like, okay, this is my time.
This is my time. Yeah, that's when I watch films for Film Week, and that's when it happens. They usually, my wife, my daughter go to bed about 8, and then from 8 to about 2, then I'm cranking it. I'm writing things. Like I just wrote a blog for the. I've written a couple of blogs for the American Cinematheque these last couple of series.
Oh, good.
Yeah, did one on the Apu trilogy, which they're doing a series on, and that is deeply meaningful to me. I love me some Apu trilogy, so I wrote a little appreciative blog on it.
Now, what's the latest on Synagogues? Is that happening?
We're almost there. Few tweaks.
Holding that up besides me?
I am.
Am I holding that up?
No, you're not holding that up.
No, I sent you a bio.
You did. You sent me the bio.
It was very serious because I'll be unemployed soon, and I want to make sure
you
people know that I have credits.
Got the bio, got all the photos, got all the stuff. I'm just learning some of the ins and outs, and I actually have to build out for contributors. I'm writing up a sort of a guideline so that people just don't feel like it's free for all. There have to be sort of guidelines for contributors to write reviews and all that kind of stuff. So
now, why do we find
the time to do that?
Now, why do we still have only 4 Twitter feeds? Isn't the idea that we were going to get her a little plug-in?
Yes.
That allowed us to get another 4, then another 4.
Yeah.
Because right now it's just Synagogues, Vanity Fair, Hollywood Reporter, and LAFCA.
Yeah, we'll get more.
We need more than that.
More
we can't do 4. Yeah. You're saying that, but you'll never do it.
Yeah, no, I'm setting a day aside.
I thought she said, here's the plugin, it's called Bling Blang, and go get it. And go get it.
Yeah, and they just updated it.
I'll pay for it if you want.
No, I already bought it. I already bought it. Yeah,
okay.
I bought it. It's just that she needs to. I have to get her.
Does she have it?
Yeah, she has it, but they've updated it, and there's a whole thing. I'll explain it to you later. It doesn't. No reason to have to, air our dirty Captain Underpants with the listeners.
That was last week.
I know. Wasn't that funny? You like how I tied it back in?
No,
it's a little.
I don't like that at all, as it turns out.
All right. So let's see. We've got, we have an interview again this week. More great Disney animation coffee table bookness. This week we're going to be talking to David Bossert, who wrote Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, The Search for the Lost Disney Cartoons. This is an amazing... If you don't know Oswald existed before Mickey Mouse. Oswald informs Mickey Mouse. And if you ever go to California Adventure, the other theme park that's adjacent to Disneyland, the first thing you see when you walk in is a little gas station over on your left side, which is where all the Oswald memorabilia is sold. It's pretty terrific. Oswald is really where it all begins. It's not Steamboat Willie. It's Oswald. It's all about Oswald. So,
Oswald Cobblepot?
Oswald. So we're going to be talking to David Bossert, who wrote Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, The Search for the Lost Disney Cartoons, which is a fascinating story. And meanwhile, we still have a lot of television left over from last week. We have a whole boatload of classic movies, which is probably where we should start. Because right at the top, Mark Kaiser, old buddy, old pal.
Mon chéri.
1982.
The watershed sci-fi year for that activated All the J.J. Abramses of the world.
It wasn't all about 77 or 78. That all informed it. It wasn't even about Raiders of the Lost Ark, 1980, 81. No, all of that was lead-in. All of that was prologue. 82 is when it really just ignited, right? That's
Blade Runner?
Oh my gosh.
Tron?
Blade Runner, Tron.
Star Trek 2?
Yeah. What else?
Well, you're holding one of them in your pants. Et.
That's right.
Et.
That's what my daughter used to call elephants, and before she was able to say it. It started with et, and then it became elephant, and then it became ericent, and then it became elephant, finally.
Did you say effluent?
No, she never said effluent. She said ericent and efficient, and she also said et. That was the first thing she would say is et.
By the way, if you're dyslexic,
yeah,
the Blu-ray we're talking about now is called TE.
Yes.
So now are we done with the bad jokes?
Yeah,
we
we
can say
are.
what it is.
E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial.
And
Steven
Tron, by the way.
Spielberg's.
Did we say Tron?
We did say Tron.
Okay.
Road Warrior. Was that year as well? Megaforce.
Okay.
Anyway, E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial, the phenomenon of 1982, really was. It made $399 million. I don't know why they weren't able to engineer that last million. That thing, it became the all-time highest grossing film domestically in American history at $399 million.
I remember that.
It's like, I remember thinking, it was $399 million and like 400,000. It wasn't even a million they needed. It was like another 600,000. And I kept thinking, Universal, could you not possibly, just for public relations, just for the double truck variety ad that brags about the 400 million mark, could you not figure out how to generate another, $600,000 or $700,000? Come on, seriously.
Today they would literally four-wall a theater.
Yeah.
They would have every Universal employee go see it.
Yeah. Or you do what the Chinese do, and you just block buy those tickets anyway on behalf of people.
That's true.
And then you say you got there. I mean, come on.
You know what? Chinese film receipts are like football games. Like, when they say like it'll be a stadium that seats 80,000 people, and they'll say capacity crowd here at the Coliseum, and the place will be half empty.
Yeah.
Because their claim is that they bought the ticket but didn't show up. I guess that's the claim.
That's it.
That's the Chinese box office.
Yeah, that is exactly.
They just buy thousands of tickets for
millions. They buy millions of tickets.
Who will never show up.
Yeah, because it's not whether or not the movie makes money. The government funds a lot of these things through its entities, and it's a PR thing. It's just like the whole point of a Transformers movie is to sell toys, not to make money. Well, the whole point of a lot of these Chinese movies is to promote a propaganda campaign. So it's basically a line item in the national in your state budget, and they're just buying tickets so that they can have propaganda advantage. It's ridiculous.
Although it's funny how the bloom's off that rose now.
Yeah,
because the Chinese government's pulling back now.
Yeah, well. All I can tell you is the little lenticular here that shows them flying across the moon is pretty great. Love that.
Yay.
Love that. So this is the 35th anniversary limited edition of E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial. This is it. This is it. This is the real deal. It's 4K plus a Blu-ray plus digital HD. So you get everything here. You get your ultraviolet, you got your regular Blu-ray, and you got your 4K, which is beyond beautiful. The detail on the 4K is just not to be believed. It's movies like this where you really see the grain in the film, where you really see the texture on E.T., where you actually, on the minus side, you see all of the rotoscoping and the you can see the lines in perfect detail wherever there's compositing. All of that really manifests itself, and it's cool. I like being able to see some of the seams and the retro quality of older special effects. I appreciate that.
All that matters is, are the cops holding walkie-talkies or
guns? Guns.
The end.
Yeah.
You need to know.
That's all you got to know. And it's just absolutely beautiful. I love this movie. This was the first movie that I cried at. It was the first time I cried in a movie, and it tore my heart out, and I felt like, okay, now
last shot, by the way,
I'm a grown up.
That last shot still gets you.
It does.
I rewatched this about a year ago, and that last and I'm looking at it going, okay, this is kind of a fun family film, okay.
Oh,
it holds up mostly, but that last shot gets you right here.
It does. It is just so perfect, and tons of bonus features, hours and hours of them. The featurettes and the all the stuff that you've seen before, the 20th anniversary premiere and stuff on the designs and the marketing, and it's this is all stuff that has been around forever, but it's great. The ET journals are wonderful. It's all absolutely spectacular and really well worth having. What I would love personally is a new feature-length commentary with Steven Spielberg looking back in perspective 35 years later. That's what I would like. Don't get that, but I would like it, and I would hope that he would do that one day. Not the kind of thing that he really does, but...
that's like asking Woody Allen.
I know. But in any case, that would be nice. Someday, maybe, perhaps. Keep him around long enough. You also get the CD soundtrack on here, by the way. That's a collectible book. So, I mean, there's a lot of great stuff here. This is a perfect set to have. And the 4K, man. I mean, if you're trying on the fence about whether or not there's enough really quality 4K material out there, damn it, get this. This is, this. If you have a 4K setup and you don't have ET on 4K, then there's no reason why you even have a 4K TV.
Well, but no one. Yes, however. Do you want to populate your 4K TV screen with movies that are, 40 years old?
Yes.
35 years old?
Yes. 50 years old, 60 years old. Yes. Yes.
Although, you know what? If someone were to do like the most...
The Great Train Robbery, the original one.
Exactly.
The black and white, silent.
Although Metropolis in 4K, that would be cool.
Yes. That's what I'm talking about.
What was that noise?
That noise? That was my Apple Watch.
We were just talking... Whoa! Yes. What is that?
Yeah, that's the New York Times.
Don't say it.
Do you want me to read this to you?
I don't.
Want me to read my New York Times story off my Apple Watch to you? The New York, Mark and I were talking about this. The only reason I got this thing, the only reason I'm wearing it today is just I happen to have it on. I usually wear this just to go running. Let's see, New York Times. The nun with a chainsaw. The shoot at the hurricane. I don't know what this is.
It's a great podcasting moment, folks, and you're experiencing it right now.
Okay, it's not.
All right, what are we doing?
Okay, moving on. So let's see.
Yes.
Fine.
This is awesome. Now, Now, here's the thing.
You're such a goof.
Do we hate? Do we hate this movie or hate this movie?
I kind of hate this movie, but a lot of people don't. So whatever.
So, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band is from 1978. And
I'd like to like this movie. I really there are all kinds of reasons that I have why I feel like I should like this movie, but I can't. I just can't.
So the movie is based on the Beatles, obviously, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, probably the greatest rock and roll album of all time, and also their Abbey Road. So this has nothing to do with the Beatles. However, it does have to do with Robert Stigwood, who at the time
was the man.
Yeah. Saturday Night Fever.
Yeah.
This thing. He was the man. He was the
man.
musical man.
He was.
He was like the modern urban musical man.
Yeah.
That was his thing. And so this thing starred Peter Frampton and the Bee Gees. It's kind of like a rock opera. I guess you can say it's like a rock opera.
It is.
Where the song is kind of, with like the lyrics of the songs and the dialogue that sung move the
but it's a mess.
Story around. The thing is basically a mess. However, man, you just cannot. This thing was all-star, beyond all-star. I mean, everybody from Peter Allen and Keith Carradine and Etta James was in this. Nona Hendrix, Hart. I mean, everybody was. Bonnie Raitt was in this thing.
It was too. Well, Stigwood was called. Stigwood was a music guy, right? I mean, he those were his origins, and he just called in every favor and called in every cameo imaginable.
But it's just so mindless and confusing. And,
it is.
It's what's
just
the story?
bloated.
What's the idea?
I don't know.
It's just a big mess. And the
it's a
thing
big
is,
mess.
It wound up being a really embarrassing mess that wound up in some circles being kind of endearing for its messiness.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is just a silly movie, a very high camp kind of a film, but it's you know what? I mean, I have not watched this Blu-ray, but I would watch this. The thing is that would I watch it and then after 15 minutes go, you know what? This thing really does suck. Or would I watch it and just love the nostalgia?
It's I guess there's a nostalgia factor to it. Look, everybody knows I love the Bee Gees. I mean, I love the Bee Gees, and I have some fondness for Peter Frampton as well. But I do remember watching this at the time and thinking, huh? It just didn't. It just felt like somewhere between the meeting where everybody said, "Oh, that is an awesome idea," and that premiere screening, something went really badly wrong. And what winds up on the screen, you just know could not possibly have been what excited everybody in a meeting 8, 9, 10 months earlier. It just didn't
Well, part of it too is Michael Schultz, the guy who directed this thing.
Michael Schultz is a very good director, though.
I mean, yeah, okay, look.
Car
yeah,
Wash. I mean, Car Wash is a great movie.
Yeah, but is it Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band? You want it to be like a big epic thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not. I don't think Michael Schultz is necessarily the problem. I mean, everybody involved in this is look. Stigwood's a sharp guy. George Martin, who did the music. Michael Schultz. These are all quality people from the era. Henry Edwards, who wrote it, I don't really know what his deal is, but it just conceptually the whole thing kind of goes south somewhere. I don't know. Anyway. Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Club Band from Shout Factory. Shout will dig up the kitsch, man. They go there. So can't take that away from them. Okay, we got a rapturous bunch of stuff from Kino this week. Kino Lorber and their Studio Classics line. Keep just bringing out the stuff the studios will not. And I'll be honest, I think this is one of the best weeks that they have had in a very, very long time. The late, wonderful Jerry Lewis, who left us just a few weeks ago, stars in Visit to a Small Planet. This is one of his lesser titles that is not often talked about, and I think it's really underrated. This is a very, very funny film, directed by Norman Taurog, who is one of the great, good stalwart comedy directors of the day, worked incredibly well with Jerry Lewis. They did a number of films together. This was made in 1960, and it's some of the funniest stuff that Jerry's ever done. What is not often known about this is based on a play by Gore Vidal. Did you know that?
Which
Visit to a Small Planet?
That I did not know.
It's based on a play by Gore Vidal.
And I love Gore Vidal, and I did not know that.
And say now, if you say to people, how would you like to see Jerry Lewis do Gore Vidal?
No, but Gore Vidal was funny. Yeah. He was a funny writer.
Oh, he was. But that's not often realized that a Jerry Lewis movie was based on Gore Vidal source material.
You would not put those two together.
No, you wouldn't. But it works here, especially the way that the script is adapted. It really, really tunes it to Jerry, and it's insanely funny. I mean, it's the closest to science fiction that Jerry ever did. And he's basically an alien visiting the Earth, as long as we're on talking about E.T. and all this kind of stuff. And it's just fish out of water stuff done Jerry Lewis style, and it is so unbelievably funny. It is so riotously hysterical. The gags are first rate, and this is just such a fun movie. Visit to a Small Planet, absolutely first rate. Also, one of the best films that Walter Hill ever did is The Long Riders. Now, Walter Hill understood that there was value to connecting the real-life casting and historical casting, and so in a way that it wouldn't look like stunt casting. And because he's dealing with the James and the Younger gangs, Jesse James and Frank James and the Younger brothers, he decided to cast real-life pairs of brothers in this. And so David Carradine, Keith Carradine, and Robert Carradine, along with James and Stacy Keach, Dennis and Randy Quaid, and Christopher and Nicholas Guest. Now, this is the only time that you have had 4 teams of brothers in a movie together.
Oh my God! I know that. At the time, that was a big deal.
It was a big deal.
Because I remember like the posters, like they're all on the horse, right? They're riding towards the camera.
Yeah.
Like wow, all those brothers. There it is.
That shot.
How'd they do that?
Yeah, and it's really smart. Walter Hill was a really aggressive director at the time. Had some very interesting ideas, and. From 1980, this is a really, really sharp movie, done with a brand new 4K restoration, transferred to Blu-ray, and it's not the best telling of that story, but it is certainly one of the most interesting. And there's a lot of interesting extras here. Walter Hill pays homage to Sam Peckinpah, who certainly was an inspiration for the way that this film was made. And there's a 61-minute making of feature on here, which is not even a featurette; it's like a mini feature documentary. The Northfield, Minnesota raid, Anatomy of a Scene, which is really, really interesting. So a lot of terrific extras. This is one of the best things that Kino Lorber has done in quite some time in terms of the extras. And Long Riders, one of the classic movies of the '80s. Can't complain. Funny Bones, Mark. You remember Funny Bones?
I do.
Wasn't that great?
No.
No? You didn't like Funny Bones?
Let me see that. Give me that.
I thought Funny Bones was funny.
When was this?
I thought Funny Bones was awesome.
Maybe I don't remember this.
You don't remember? See, you're confusing with something else. You're confusing with the Bogdanovich.
You're right. I don't remember this one.
Yeah. No, funny. So Funny Bones, directed by Peter Chelsom, who went nowhere from 1995. Peter Chelsom co-wrote this and directed it, and it is quite a funny, wacky, farcical comedy with a very, very funny collection of talented actors. The cast includes Oliver Platt, Lee Evans, who's gone on to do next to nothing after Mouse Hunt. I don't know what happened there. Oliver Reed, Leslie Caron, and, once again, Jerry Lewis.
Yay!
Of course, Jerry Lewis is very much part of the sort of the ensemble here. He's not really standing out. It's nice to see an aging Leslie Caron unafraid to really do something much lighter and less self-serious than what she had done in the past. So really, it's a very, very good ensemble. And Oliver Platt playing Jerry Lewis's son is one of the funniest things that I've ever seen. It's a really great gag-filled ensemble piece, and you should check it out. Peter Chelsom, I wish he had had a better career, but Funny Bones with Oliver Platt, Lee Evans, Oliver Reed, Leslie Caron, and Jerry Lewis. Really quite a fun movie from 1995. Also from Kino Lorber, Love with a Proper Stranger, Natalie Wood and Steve McQueen. I am a Natalie Wood fanatic. Anybody who knows me knows that, so I am not qualified to say anything critical about this. From 1963, directed by the great Robert Mulligan. And this is the film, by the way, that introduced Tom Bosley. This was his first movie. Isn't that wild? Tom Bosley.
Wow, that introduced the world to Tom Bosley.
It was
incredible. What a landmark film.
You know what?
What a time capsule.
Produced by Alan Pakula. It's just a great movie. Love with a Proper Stranger, one of the best performances that Natalie Wood ever gave on screen. Her chemistry with Steve McQueen is just tremendous.
Was I with you when I was maybe it was Phil? I was sitting on a train. This was a couple years. It would not have been you. Sitting on a train a couple years ago, and we could have sworn that we saw a guy across the aisle who was Tom Bosley. It was before he died.
Yeah.
Was that you?
Yeah, I think so.
What were we doing?
That sounds familiar.
And then, so we're looking at this guy going, hey, I think that's Tom Bosley. Tom Bosley dead?
I don't know.
And then, so it was like, who's going to yell Tom? To see if he turns around. It's like the only way to know.
This sounds really familiar. Either I was there or you've told me the story with such vivacity that I feel as though I was there.
It must be a train, because otherwise it wouldn't be a bus. Maybe it was a bus. I don't know. But anyway, so somebody yelled, Tom! To see if he would turn around.
Didn't.
And then when he turned around, we realized that A, not only is that not him, but B, he's dead.
Okay.
So that's why Tom Bosley.
I think you may have told. I think you may have told me with that where I feel like now I feel like I was there. Anyway. So, Love with a Proper Stranger, one of the more mainstream films, one of the bigger mainstream films to deal with unplanned pregnancy and a lot of these, sort of really pressing issues that were not sort of talked about in movies in 1963. But Natalie Wood is amazing. Steve McQueen, jazz musician, all of the family and pregnancy and religious issues in this movie. It's great. It's terrific.
My father had a huge crush on Natalie Wood.
I still do.
Yeah, you know what's funny is that I thought she was so, at the time I was a kid, my dad said he had a crush on her, and I would look at her and I would acknowledge that she was very pretty, but I'd be like, yeah, but she's 42 years old.
Oh, it's the best.
Whatever it was. Now it's like I would date a 42-year-old in
totally.
a second.
Heartbeat. Yeah, right.
When I was like 20, I'm like 42-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Kidding me?
And Harold Pinter's amazing 1958 play, The Birthday Party, was filmed as a movie in 1968, 10 years later. And by William Friedkin, and it's not William Friedkin's best-known movie because he didn't really kind of become a thing. Friedkin was on his way up, but it wasn't until The French Connection and The Exorcist that he really became the man. So in the years before that, he was making still some pretty great movies, and The Birthday Party is a really, really tough play, and it makes it for a very, very tough movie. And Friedkin is really showing his stuff here. Great cast: Robert Shaw, Patrick McGee, Dandy Nichols. It's a really, really solid movie. And if you haven't seen it, it's really, really worth checking out. Powerful, powerful stuff. I would compare it a little bit to 12 Angry Men in some respects, a little bit to Glengarry Glen Ross. It has some of those same qualities, but it is, it takes place in a boarding house in England, and where there's a conversation, there's a discussion going on that sort of spirals out of control in a very, very powerful way. Pinter really just did some of his best work here, and Friedkin just gives it such a great cinematic treatment. And Robert Shaw, absolutely just amazing. So that is The Birthday Party from 1968. And then lastly, from the Kino Lorber set this week, is Adventures of Captain Marvel. And this is significant because you will never see this hero referred to as Captain Marvel ever again. This is a serial from 1941 where the hero known as Captain Marvel, who is now known as just Shazam, and who was featured in a Saturday morning cartoon, the Shazam and Isis Hour, back when I was growing up. They made a serial back then, just like they did for Superman and Batman and all the other heroes of the day. And it's it's a little cheesy, and it's got all the qualities of the serials. They're all shot very quickly and without a lot of coverage, and in a very, very rough and tumble way. And it's about 4 hours worth of these episodes. And here's what's important to remember: this is a Republic serial that was drawn from the Whiz Comics. Whiz Comics was eventually acquired by DC, which then folded Captain Marvel in with all the other DC comic characters, which lasted right up until, I think it was the late 80s, when there was a lawsuit between Marvel Comics and DC. And Marvel sued DC over the name of Captain Marvel because they had their own Captain Marvel, who would eventually then, the mantle of their Captain Marvel would eventually be assumed by a woman. And they are doing that as a feature film now. And they didn't want DC having a character called Captain Marvel. They felt it was a confusing association of trademark, and they won the lawsuit. So DC had to change the name of Captain Marvel to Shazam, which apparently is also going to be a film now. However, everything prior to that lawsuit is still allowed to be called Captain Marvel. And so here, you still get the adventures of Captain Marvel. And because we keep it real on this show, it looks like Mark just got a very special call. A call that may mean finally leasing his place. So while Mark is gone, I'm going to go through another great selection of movies that we have this week. New Blu-rays from Twilight Time. Twilight Time, you can find all of the titles at twilighttimemovies.com. They all come with isolated music tracks. They are like a lot of these smaller companies. They do licensing deals with the studios, and they find great stuff, primarily from 20th Century Fox, MGM, and Columbia, part of the Sony library now. The 5 films this month are all really, really interesting. It's a great collection of movies, starting with their ongoing set of Woody Allen titles. September. September is one of the very the Bergman-esque Woody Allen dramas, not intended to be funny, intended to be very, very serious, and very evocative of Bergman. In this case, Autumn Sonata is the Bergman film that he is most trying to evoke, the idea of sisterhood and female characters in a very small, claustrophobic environment. It looks a lot like Autumn Sonata. It feels a lot like Autumn Sonata, and just the name September is meant to evoke the idea of autumn. So it is one of his great tributes to Bergman, who Woody Allen has long said was his great inspiration. And it was criticized at the time for being a little too self-serious. Because people wanted Woody to be funny. They at least wanted him to be smart funny. They didn't want him to be this self-serious. They didn't really want to crawl into this part of his brain. And so I think it was overly criticized at the time. When you go back to it and you revisit it now, it's a much more impressive film. With a little bit of distance, you look at the performances from Diane Wiest and Mia Farrow, Elaine Stritch, and of course, Jack Warden and Sam Waterston in the holding down the male end of the story. It's still really great Woody Allen from one of his most prolific and interesting periods, and it gets inside human relationships in a very, very chillingly honest way that many of Woody's other films don't necessarily do, and it stands apart from some of his other films as a result. So really a beautiful film, beautifully photographed and designed. Santo Locasto did the production design. Carla De Palma did the cinematography. It's really just a superb film, and the isolated music track makes it all better. Lawman with Burt Lancaster, Robert Ryan, and Lee J. Cobb. Pretty terrific Western. Mark is now back. Mark, how did that go?
Oh, it was not.
It was not for you.
It was not the real estate.
Oh, it was not the real
Although it was
estate.
somebody who.
I see.
It was a friend of mine who lives in New Jersey.
Yes.
Who has a condo, and she rents it out to people all the time.
Oh, okay.
So I kind of wanted to get her take on the piano situation.
I
Is that a
see.
deal breaker? Should I be panicking?
And she said no.
She said conditionally no.
Good.
Obviously, if she's Billy Joel at 5 a.m. for 3 hours, yes. But just don't worry about it. What's killing me is that normally I would tell this piano woman go to hell.
Yeah.
But
You need this to happen.
yes, but also I thought there'd be more activity for my place. Like
Yeah.
I thought there'd be more showings, more calls,
Yeah.
more interest, where I can say, "Who needs this woman? I got 5 other people on the hook."
Yeah.
Where she's kind of all I got.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes you want to
Well.
investigate her more. But I might be taking another call soon.
All right.
My girlfriend's going to call from Paris.
I
Here's
know.
the thing: when it's 9 hours
Okay.
ahead
Yeah.
from Los Angeles to Paris.
Yes.
So there's a small window,
Yeah.
right, in which we can speak.
Yeah.
9
It's
hours.
like it's like if she's going to Mars and there's a small window where the
very true.
asteroid zone doesn't interfere with the
asteroid
transmission
zone.
or
Okay,
whatever.
Matt Damon.
Thank you.
So I believe that the window is opening in a few minutes, in which
Okay.
case I will be taking my leave
All right.
again.
Well, I'm just rolling through the Twilight Times right now. Michael Winner of Death Wish fame directed the very fine Lawman in 1971, right at the tail end of the Western movie era, which really kind of wraps up by about 1972. And, this is just a good, solid, classic Western sheriff tale. Burt Lancaster plays the sheriff, and Lee J. Cobb plays the rancher who accidentally kills a guy, and you got Robert Duvall and Robert Ryan. It's all good, solid, crusty Western stuff, and Michael Winner handles it very, very expertly, and it's worth checking out. That's Lawman. And then also on the Western Front, Hour of the Gun, which is one of the best OK Corral movies of all time. I think it's maybe even, I don't know, Tombstone. You think Tombstone is still the best?
Tombstone is the best.
You think?
It's the one that feels the most authentic, and it seems to be the best researched.
Because Hour of the Gun is awfully well. Okay, let me.
Not My Darling Clementine.
No, not My Darling Clementine. But I was going to say the Star Trek episode Hour of the Gun,
Which I like.
That's actually one of my favorites.
Yeah, but that's not. I'm not looking at that for historical accuracy.
Yeah, but that is that. Wait, that no. The movie. This is Hour of the Gun, but the Star Trek episode is
Spectre of the Gun.
Spectre of the Gun. Thank you, Spectre of the Gun.
And why do I know that? Zling nerd.
Yeah, nerd.
Zling
Okay,
nerd.
so anyway, Hour of the Gun with James Garner, Jason Robards, and Robert Ryan again is pretty great. This was done by the Mirisch Company at the time, who mostly did a lot of Billy Wilder movies. And they were kind of the original, the Mirisch brothers were the original independent production group in Hollywood. And they put this together beautifully, directed by John Sturges of who had previously made the Great Escape, right?
Yes.
John Sturges, Great Escape.
That's right.
And really expert director, wonderful score by Jerry Goldsmith, kind of really getting his groove on right in the late 60s. That's when he was in the ascent. And I think it's right up there. It's one of the best OK Corral movies. It really it feels honest. It's tough. It's terrific. I really enjoyed it. So
Sturges, although he also directed Magnificent Seven.
That's right. Yeah.
He had a good career. He was kind of one of those guys that did a lot of good, like a little better than journeyman work.
Yeah.
He was a journeyman guy who did better than journeyman work.
He's terrific. He's a good guy. And then Gun Fury 3D. This is a really kind of a strange one, directed by Raoul Walsh, who's another one of those guys, those journeyman, those just slightly better than journeyman guys, from 1953. That first big 3D wave, and this was a 3D Western that kind of sort of works. It doesn't need to be 3D, but it's got a great cast: Rock Hudson, Donna Reed. Phil Carey, and it's an okay story. It's kind of a standard revenge western, and it all kind of begins from a stagecoach robbery and goes south from there. But it's not great. The 3D is an interesting thing. It's kind of more a novelty than anything else. And then the last Twilight Time title is a real. I think we would call this a curio. At least that's what the trades usually refer to these things as. From 1953, Beneath the 12-Mile Reef. This was a very early widescreen effort, CinemaScope kind of tryout, and it's not a very good movie by any measure. Robert Wagner was not a good actor in his first few years, especially in things like what was the Prince. What's the comic strip that
Robert Wagner?
Robert Wagner, not Prince Charming,
Prince Valiant?
Prince Valiant. He was Prince Valiant with that horrible bob haircut. That was just really
Well, you
embarrassing.
can't have Prince Valiant without the horrible bob hair.
Oh, my word. Anyway,
But now you're talking the mid-50s, though.
Yeah.
This is when he was first starting.
When he was first starting, he's just not a very good actor. And he's just a pretty face. And he eventually becomes a better actor. He ages into it in a much more serious way. But Harry Carey Jr., Gloria Gordon, Jay Novella, Peter Graves. Great supporting cast here. But what a strange movie. This is.
He's still around, by the way, Robert Wagner.
Oh, I know he is. Yeah.
By the
RJ.
way,
Everyone refers to him as RJ.
You know why?
Still.
He was married to Natalie Wood.
I know.
Aren't you jealous?
Yeah.
He went there.
Twice.
That's right.
Twice. They're married, divorced, then married again, and
Wah.
then everything went really south. But anyway, this is.
He killed her.
So this was nominated for an Oscar for its CinemaScope cinematography. And that's kind of all it really has going for it. It's about sponge diving. And there's a romance.
You mean sponges like that you clean your pots and pans with?
Yeah, sponge diving. And there's a romance that doesn't really work. And there's not really much to it. But there's a featurette on Robert Wagner, an isolated score, and some beautiful photography. But otherwise, it's just it's like an underwater adventure movie about sponge diving, which is very strange, just to show off. Like they wanted something to show off CinemaScope cinematography, and they thought, oh, I know, how about diving? What could they dive for? I don't know, sponges. And that was the end of the development meeting. So there it is.
Wait, I have a couple movies to talk about.
Yes, sir.
Before my girlfriend calls and the window opens. We have The Moderns. Now, here's the thing with The Moderns. The Moderns was directed by Alan Rudolph, who was one of those guys from the 70s and early, like a John Salesy type guy from the 70s and 80s, who did a lot of highly respected indie stuff that nobody went to see.
Yep.
But they got great casts, and he definitely has his fans. He was
an Altman acolyte.
He was an Altman guy.
Yeah.
This one, I actually like it because it's about, and I remember liking this at the time because it takes place in Paris in the mid-20s. And Keith Carradine plays this expatriate American. He's living in Paris, and he's whooping it up with all the great writers that lived in Paris at the time, including Hemingway and Gertrude Stein and Alice B. Toklas, and they're all represented in the film. And I sort of liked it from that perspective. I liked the Paris locations. I like Rudolph's. He directed he wrote most of his stuff, if not all of his stuff. And he was, I would say, he was a better writer than a director, I think. Very evocative characters. So I like this movie, The Moderns. The Blu-ray contains new interviews with Alan Rudolph and the producer, and Keith Carradine, who's obviously very old right now. And so it's remastered from 2K. So whatever, 2K. But I'm glad it's out on Blu-ray. The Moderns. We also have. Suspect. Here's the thing with Suspect. Suspect was from 1987? 1987.
Yeah.
And it stars
sounds
Cher
right.
and Dennis Quaid, and it's about the murder of a Washington legal secretary. Now,
This was when Cher was doing her momentary acting thing.
I know, it's weird. I know.
Yeah, right?
It's hard to believe that Cher was like an Oscar.
A regular Oscar nominee and one-time winner in the 80s. She
How did that happen?
But it happened with Silkwood. With the Silkwood, so she shows up in a movie and everybody was like, "Really, Cher? Isn't she like she sparkles and cheesy TV and has been Sunny ex-wife?" And suddenly she's in Silkwood and she's great. And everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, Cher!" And next thing you know, she's doing movies like and she's winning Oscars and she's great and she's terrific. Yeah, it was amazing midlife change.
And now she's a freak.
Yeah.
So anyway, so the movie, there's a murder of a Washington legal secretary. The only suspect is this homeless guy who she thinks is innocent. So if he's innocent, who really did it? I remember this movie because it had Cher, who was kind of attractive at the time, and Dennis Quaid, who I always liked. It also had a crazy. I didn't like the ending. I felt like I won't tell you, but the person who wound up doing it is like, okay.
I know that's the slam on the movie is that they sort of. They painted themselves into a corner at the end and just they just shrugged and said, "All right, okay, fine."
But it was directed by Peter Yates. Speaking of journeyman directors,
Krull.
Yes,
the best movie he ever made.
And by the way, well, he also did Breaking Away.
Yeah.
Also, and I'm just going to say something.
And The Dresser.
He did The Dresser. Albert Finney, loved that movie.
Same year as Krull.
By the way, putting this out there, Bullet. I rewatched Bullet a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Yates did that too.
Yeah.
Boring.
See, I love Bullet.
Boring. No,
really?
if you watch that today, boring.
Really?
Yes.
Ah.
Because everybody remembers the chase,
And no one remembers anything else.
Everything else is these slow tracking shots, these boring conversations, and then there's a chase.
Yeah.
And then there's like more boring conversations and long, slow tracking shots. And okay, oh look, over the shoulder, over the shoulder, over the shoulder. This is exciting.
So, want me to do that? Okay, you go ahead, do that.
More.
Hit that.
Wade, why are you denying me the
No,
pleasure of talking about The Man with Two Brains?
Do it.
I love this movie. Now, did you see the documentary about the if you're not in the obit, eat breakfast?
The what?
If you're not in the obit, eat breakfast or something like that?
No.
A documentary about classic Hollywood figures, mostly comedians, who are still alive well into their 90s.
Okay.
It was a documentary that includes Dick Van Dyke, Mel Brooks, Carl Reiner.
Wow.
It's really good. It's very, and it's not just one of those like pro old people things.
Yeah.
You realize everything these guys have gone through, everything they've survived. The fact that the reason why they're still thriving at that age is because they're just young at heart.
Yeah.
They're always young. Dick Van Dyke still dancing.
I know.
Mel Brooks can still tell a story.
Yeah.
And Carl Reiner is one of those guys. And if you take a look at Carl Reiner's filmography, you realize all the really funny films he directed.
Yeah.
And The Man with Two Brains is one of them. It's great. It's sort of like a Frankenstein riff, and it stars Steve Martin. And do you remember in this movie? Now, this is when Kathleen Turner was a hottie, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do you remember the kiss that Kathleen Turner gave Steve Martin in this movie?
Vague. Yes, I do. Now that you mention it,
and it was a sight gag. That was the idea. That was a joke. She shoves her MFing tongue right into his goddamn MFing mouth to the point where you're like, oh my God, I hope that was one take. Because it was really, really disgusting. But I'm so sure Carl was like, you know what, man, if you do this right, we just have to do it once. And it was just one of the great, uncomfortable, hilarious screen kisses.
Did you ever see Carl Reiner dancing on The Tonight Show?
I did not.
With Johnny?
I did not.
You need to find that. I'm not even sure if that video is on YouTube or anything, but it was one of his last appearances when I believe it was with Johnny, but it was insanely funny. He came out and he just did this. It was like 45 seconds of dancing. That wasn't even good dancing. It was just spastic dancing, but it was insanely funny.
Anyway, this is a good, solid comedy. I mean, it's not like Blazing Saddles or Airplane hilarious, but this is a good, solid, fun comedy. I dare you to watch this and not laugh.
Warner Archive, Blu-ray, beautiful. Got 3 really great collector sets here. A couple of them from the people at Arrow and Arrow Academy, and then one from Flicker Alley. We're going to start with Flicker Alley. Arthur Conan Doyle, apart from writing the Sherlock Holmes novels, did write other things, which people oftentimes forget, one of which was The Lost World. And The Lost World, which is just really good, solid pulp, was made into a landmark silent film in 1925. And this is kind of the original Jurassic Park, really. Harry O. Hoyt, H-O-Y-T, not like Irish O, but middle initial O, did the film in 1925. And it wound up being part of David Shepard's Black Hawk Films collection, which means that it is now a Blu-ray from Flicker Alley. And Flicker Alley has really just gone full Criterion on this. There's tons of stuff on here. There's a full audio commentary by Nicholas Ciccone, who is a film historian, talking about the every reason to appreciate this film, which has now been 2K restored, and it is absolutely gorgeous. And you also have some deleted scenes, restored outtakes from the original Nitrate Transfer, which is like extraordinary. And the RFD 10,000 BC short film from 1917, directed by Willis O'Brien, for Thomas Edison, which is kind of the precursor to this. And then The Ghost of Slumber Mountain from 1918, which was a short film done by Willis O'Brien as well. Really just an amazing bunch of stuff. So The Lost World, in terms of special effects and art direction and everything else, is just a landmark silent. Got to have it. It's on Blu-ray. It's another absolute must-include for your silent classics collection. And then from the good people at Arrow, we've got a couple here. From regular Arrow is the Mario Bava film Erik the Conqueror. That's Erik with a K, which is really great gladiator era sword and sorcerer, sword and sandal. What else do we want to call this? The Hercules era. Hercules era really, when all the Italian guys were doing either spaghetti westerns or Hercules and sword and sandal epics.
So cheesy.
All cheesy.
Be honest.
But you know what? Erik the Conqueror is actually one of the best of them. Mario Bava, primarily known for his giallo stuff, is really better at this kind of stuff. This is from 1961. And they had, Kirk Douglas had just made The Vikings a couple of years earlier, and they wanted to do something more Viking-oriented than their usual kind of Roman and Greco-Roman stuff. So they kind of merged the two genres and came up with Erik the Conqueror, which is cheesy. Don't get me wrong; it's silly and cheesy and very kitschy of the era, but it's still kind of it's got something to it. You sort of enjoy watching it because it's retro and throwback and has a whole bunch of interesting extras on it as well. So that's a nice set. And then this is one that a little bit more legit from Arrow Academy is The Big Knife, which features an amazing performance by Shelley Winters along with a staggering cast. I mean, Shelley Winters is sort of the standout here, but check it out. Jack Palance, Ida Lupino, Rod Steiger, and of course Gene Hagen from Singing in the Rain. I can't stand him. We love Gene Hagen. The Big Knife is a terrific film noir, really fantastic. One of the best film noirs ever directed by Robert Aldrich, who specialized in film noirs, based on a Clifford Odets play of all things. And it's just, this thing won the Venice Film Festival in 1955, and it kills it. It's one of the best noirs ever made. It is an absolutely superb film, and it's just one of the best adaptations of an Odette play ever. So there's no reason not to own this. Jack Palance is absolutely intense. Rod Steiger is intense. Shelley Winters steals the movie. It is great. The Big Knife from Arrow Academy.
There's Criterion Wade this week.
Yeah.
Festival by Murray Lerner. I'm thinking Murray Lerner might be Jewish.
Oh, yeah, probably.
And I can say that because I
think
happen
so.
to be Jewish.
I think so.
Anyway, so this is a documentary, and a very good one. Too short at about 100 minutes, but it's still very good. This is all about the early to mid-'60s, the Newport Folk Festival. This has nothing to do with Monterey Pop or Woodstock. This is the Newport Folk Festival, and this thing was, at the time, great. You had Howlin' Wolf, one of my favorite blues singers. You had Bob Dylan, Pete Seeger, Johnny Cash, Joan Baez, Peter, Paul, and Mary, who I loved as a kid, all showing up at this Newport Folk Festival. And Murray Lerner, guy showed up, shot it, did a great job. It's in beautiful black and white, and what's more remarkable is the editing, because what he does is he gets the great performances, but he also gets interviews with the fans, interviews with the artists. He kind of puts it all together in these sort of prime years of the festival, and this is a great and worthy document of a festival that probably never got the respect it deserved, and you can kind of check it out now on Criterion. It's called Festival. Folk Music at Newport, 1963 to 1966. 2K digital transfer, still looks great. There's a making of, which is good. A couple of featurettes, really good stuff. So Festival, if you love music and you're into Monterey Pop and you've already been through your Woodstock, you should definitely check out the great music in Festival.
Speaking of Monterey Pop coming out on Blu-ray on Criterion as well, that's... I wonder if I can go to Bob Adler and get him to talk about it. I should just literally
if you call him Robert.
I'll go up and show up at his door. He's at every Laker game. He's totally approachable. He lives 5 minutes from me. I could literally, I could drive to his front door right on PCH and knock on it and just go, Bob, you see me around town. I'm at the market every once in a while. You want to talk about Monterey Pop? He does. He talks about it all the time. They screen it up at the park, and he talks about it every year. It's a thing.
What was your last celebrity sighting at the Gelsons on
my
PCH
goodness. On Sunset. The last celebrity sighting I had there, it was Jeffrey Tambor.
Oh, it was.
It was Tambor.
That's a funny story.
It's a hysterical story. Did you ever think I forgot my dough balls? It was hysterical. It was the funniest thing ever. Did you ever in your life think you'd say, hey, I forgot my dough balls, and turn around, it's just Jeffrey Tambor right behind me?
Now, did you say, oh my God, you're Jeffrey Tambor, or did you just laugh?
I laughed. I just laughed hysterically.
Okay, good.
Because otherwise I would have said, oh my gosh, do you remember when I interviewed you on the phone for The Grinch? I was that guy. I asked you stupid questions. You were so awesome and funny. Please tell me all about making the Ropers. I loved you on the Ropers. Come on. I'm just going to turn into a goopy fan.
No, you got to worry about
I'm not going to.
Larry Sanders.
See, that too. He's so iconic. How many great things has Jeffrey Tambor done? He's just...
Well,
he's that guy.
Transparent just reinvented him.
It did. It's amazing.
Good for him. It just reinvented.
He can do anything. All right, let's hit some TV here. We got a couple of great ones from Warner, and by great ones I mean one is pretty good, and the other one's really not good at all. We have from the DC television universe, the multiverse, is the 5th season of Arrow, the one that started it all. And incredibly, Arrow keeps being interesting. I prefer the Flash conceptually, but it started to get a little crazy with all the 3rd season time tripping and back and forth and flipping around and characters changing identities and it got a little bit mad. But Arrow kind of keeps it grounded. And Oliver Queen, he's not my favorite comic character, but somehow they took Green Arrow and turned him into something really interesting on television, and continues to be very, very interesting the way that they develop this world, crossing over with Flash and Heroes of Tomorrow, and it's good stuff. I gotta say, the complete first season of Lethal Weapon, not so impressive.
Yawn.
This is on Fox.
Yawn.
Yeah.
Yawn. But come on.
If they had done this,
Wayans brothers playing.
I know.
Danny Glover.
Well,
role?
there's no reason. Look, it's not even the Danny Glover role. It's not. There is frankly nothing that corresponds to the movies. Nothing feels like the movies here. It's just like they said, "Hey,
Look, white guy, black guy.
White guy, black guy. Let's call it Lethal Weapon." That's all there is. There's nothing.
It's intellectual property. It's IP.
Yeah, see,
pre-sold.
There you go. That's it. The name recognition of the title, and they hope to get a little bit of juice out of that.
If it was called Streets of Los Angeles, you'd be like, "Oh, that sounds lame."
Yeah.
But Lethal Weapon, that's gonna get, that'll get covered in the papers.
There you go.
In the Indianapolis Star Plain Dealer, they'll cover it.
Yeah.
Because it's Lethal Weapon. If it was the Streets of Los Angeles, they wouldn't care.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Anyway,
it's unbelievable.
It's just not great. And I love Damon Wayans. I really do. I think he's great, but he's not Roger Murtaugh. And this Clayne Crawford, he's Martin Riggs. It just doesn't. None of this makes it. Just doesn't. It doesn't work. But the fact that McG sold it, I guess that gives me some solace.
No, it doesn't.
No,
why?
it doesn't.
I like the fact that McG sold it, because if he's doing TV, he's not doing movies.
Yeah,
that's how it works. All right. So last week we talked about a terrific DVD set of old Johnny Carson shows. Now we have The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, the Vault series. This is 6 DVDs. A lot of great shows here. 12 shows. Including commercials, yes, including commercials, the best. So this is shows from the 10th and 11th years. We're talking 1976. Guests include Muhammad Ali, Jack Benny, Sean Connery. By the way, Sean Connery is kind of out and about. You go on the Daily Mail, and there's shots of Sean Connery doing stuff.
I know.
He's out. He's older, but I think he's big into tennis. So I think he showed up to the British Open or the London Open or the something Open, one of those stupid Opens. I don't know what they are, but he showed up. And he's just still Sean goddamn Connery. Also, John Denver. By the way, John Denver. Why is John Denver suddenly having a moment?
His movies are in everything.
He was in...
his songs are in everything.
It was in Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
Yeah.
Alien, What's He Doodle?
Yeah.
And there was something else also recently.
Yeah.
John Denver.
I know.
The guy's having a moment.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Charlton Heston, Burt Reynolds, Don Rickles, Orson Welles. So if your grandparents need anything for... their birthday or grandparents' day. I'm telling you, The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, the Vault series. Just tell them it includes the commercials, and they'll be happy. These things are great. It's from the good folks at Time Life.
And some stuff from Acorn. If you've been wondering what happened to Tandy Newton, because she is an amazing actress, right?
Oh no! That shot at Mission Impossible 2.
Yeah.
When Tandy Newton is driving in the fancy car.
Yeah.
Oh, so hot.
I'm telling you, when she's rescued underneath the car by Matt Dillon in Crash, a movie which everyone likes to malign, that's still one of the best scenes in a Best Picture in the last 20 years. If you've been wondering what Tandy Newton's been doing, she's been on Line of Duty. Series 4 in the UK. This is a really terrific, tough police drama from the UK. Great acting. Tandy Newton just absolutely kills it. Jason Watkins is another one of the great members of the cast. It's just, you know what? I mean, really tough stuff. And coming on the heels, as it is, of another subway bombing in London, which is on the line that I've traveled in the past, and that was very upsetting. It's tough to talk about cop shows in the UK because they all sort of, when something real happens, you look at the fictional cop shows and you kind of have to compare them. But somehow this one really stands apart these days. Line of Duty Series 4, terrific show. Also stars Tandy Newton, Vicky McClure, and Martin Compston. Really terrific show. Anything related to the English legal system or derivatives thereof is great. And Janet King, Series 3, Playing Adventure, the Australian series, which basically the Australian legal system is the British legal system, pretty much. This is a terrific show. She plays a senior Crown prosecutor, and it is, everything here kind of dovetails from a suicide and goes into some really interesting social tentacles throughout Australian society. I really enjoy this show. I think it's very well written, and anything that takes me down under, I always enjoy, even if it's the ugly side of Down Under. And then Series 1 of The Heart Guy, also from Acorn TV, is from the people who did Jack Irish and Rake. And it stars Roger Corser as a heart surgeon who is so much better than anybody on Grey's Anatomy. It's unbelievable. All takes place at a really, really kind of down and out hospital, and it's mostly the usual stuff that you get from medical shows, except it's not an American medical show. It takes place in Sydney, and it's got all that cool Australian stuff. So again, anything that takes me down under is awesome. Oh, hello. Hi, there we go. Mark's going to check out with us. We're doing a podcast.
Say hello.
Hi.
There we go.
Okay, we got a hello.
We got a hello.
We got a heartbeat.
All right. Well, while Mark then takes leave for a moment, I'm going to break his heart, and I'm going to talk about anime because I know he always loves to be around when we cover anime. So I'm going to solo for a moment while Mark talks to his future better half. We have a whole bunch of really interesting anime this week. It's starting to get into kind of golden season with the anime. Year end, all of the really cool anime box sets and special editions come out, and so we're starting to get there. From Aniplex, which is a new company for us. They have been one of the top distributors of Blu-rays and DVDs in Japan and the U.S. for many years, and we've never covered Aniplex before, but we are now covering Aniplex releases. They've sent us Occultic 9. Occultic 9 started as a book and then became a video game and then became a television series. This is the first season, the first series, using all the same voice characters from the video game. And it's really well animated, and it's a really interesting kind of a mystery idea about a blog that deals with occult happenings around Japan and 9 people who all subscribe to the blog, whose lives are interconnected as a result. And then things happen, and I won't tell you any of the things that happen because that's the whole substance of it. But what a really, really fascinating series, incredibly well conceived. And beware, this is likely to become a live-action adaptation of some kind at some point. This just seems ripe and primed for it. We also have a terrific boxed set, a really great special edition set of Fruits Basket, which is, on the one hand, very much tied in with the usual high school motif that we get in a lot of anime, including Occultic 9, which we just talked about. But on the other hand, it's got family aspects to it that kind of set it apart. So a little bit tough to kind of explain all the details of Fruits Basket. If you're a fan of the original manga that it's based on, there are differences apparently based on what I was reading, but the general idea is you have a girl who goes to live with her grandfather, and then it gets into a kind of a dark shadows-y area where there's a family curse that turns people into animals from the zodiac, and all kinds of other weird little supernatural ins and outs that sort of further entangle and complicate this family dynamic, which is already very complicated. So, but it's a beautiful, beautiful set. This is the Sweet 16 anniversary edition of Fruits Basket. Lots of great extras here for fans, and again, a very innovatively animated show. Primarily an animation house. Funimation also will release live action stuff every once in a while. And we get the reboot of the Godzilla franchise from them, not quite the Hollywood way. Shin Godzilla in a Blu-ray, DVD, and ultraviolet combo set. And new era Godzilla ever since the Roland Emmerich film hasn't really worked for me, not in Japan, not here. This is more faithful, obviously, to the original Japanese approach to it. This is from the people who did Evangelion, and so it has anime aesthetics. But it's a Godzilla movie, and you get it with ultraviolet, and that's about it. There's really otherwise nothing that really distinguishes it, but it at least is more faithful to the Japanese Godzilla than it is to the American variation of it. So that's something to add to your list as well. And let's see, really quickly, just to give you mention that these are out. Matoi 9, The Sacred Slayer. This is 12 episodes plus OVA. The OVA episodes not originally shown on television, complete collection. That's another one of these kind of cute mythological girl things. In the same vein is Chihaya Furu. Chihaya Furu, Season 1. 25 episodes. That's also from Sentai. Still from Sentai is Tamako, Love Story, which I was able to watch quite a bit of, and this is very, very sweet. More of the usual teenage politics that you get in a lot of these Japanese high school things, but actually done without sort of excessive supernatural or thriller qualities. This is really very sweet and well written, and kind of doesn't take its audience for granted. So that's kind of nice. Tamako Love Story, Blu-ray DVD combo set. And then we get more Gundam stuff. There's always Gundam stuff coming out from Sunrise line over at Right Stuff. This is Mobile Suit Gundam Zeta, a new translation. You still have to be part of the Gundam universe. You still have to be a little bit well-versed on all the ins and outs of the Universal Century and know all the different factions to make sense of this. If you don't, you're going to be completely lost. If you kind of are a little bit up on it, this takes place in the Universal Century 0087, and the Titans are growing very, very restless and difficult, and that's where the conflict here begins. And of course, now then there's a stolen Gundam Mark II suit, and a lot of fun action and adventure related to that. Mobile Suit Gundam Zeta, a new translation from Sunrise over at Right Stuff. And last couple on the anime front before we then will launch into our final interview segment is Endride Part 2 and Rainbow Days, the complete series. Both of these are very good and have almost identical animation. It's a little bit strange, but a lot of these animators cross over, and there's no indication that there's any great crossover between these two, but I'm sure there's some inspiration from one to the other. Both of these are from Funimation. The Endride Part 2 is much more in the mythical realm. This takes place in kind of a mysterious other world. And again, deals with high school students and their mystical adventures. Let's just say it feels a lot like Never-Ending Story and Wizard of Oz done anime style. And then Rainbow Days is more down-to-earth, about a group of friends, and they're very down-to-earth adventures. No supernatural stuff per se here, but similar style of animation, similar characterization, and pretty enjoyable, I guess. If you can, it's the male end of all of the teen politics, the teen school, high school politics that you get in a lot of Japanese animation. So, Endride Part 2, DVD and Blu-ray combo set, and Rainbow Days, the complete series, also a Blu-ray DVD combo set. And with that, we're going to be without Mark at the end of the show, so wish Mark well as he carries on his trans-global conversation. We are now going to have an interview with David Bossert, who wrote Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, The Search for the Lost Disney Cartoons, which is an absolutely terrific book, wonderful coffee table book about the original character that started it all. Here we are with Dave Bossert.
We are today speaking with David Bossert, who is the author of the amazing new book, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, The Search for the Lost Disney Cartoons. This is from Disney Publishing, and it is absolutely a wonderful, wonderful book for anybody who has, for example, as we often do, goes to Disney's California Adventure, and the second you walk through there, you're greeted not by Mickey Mouse, not by Minnie, not by Donald Duck, but that little gas station right on the left side is just loaded with Oswald memorabilia to sort of remind you that Oswald is where the Disney legacy really, really begins. Could you give us just a thumbnail on why Oswald is so important?
Absolutely. In fact, I've been sort of using a little play off of a quote that Walt Disney once said, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that it all started with a mouse, but I'd like to say it really started with a rabbit. And this was really Walt's first big success, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. But the big issue was that he did not own the character. His producer and Universal owned the rights to the character. So when they pulled the contract from Walt, he had nothing. He didn't own the character. He didn't have more animation to do with Oswald. And so it forced him to create Mickey Mouse. And I think it's a really compelling story from the standpoint that he was dealt a devastating setback when he lost the contract to Oswald. And instead of, sulking over it, he stepped forward, and he and his top animator, Iwerks, who remained loyal to him, they designed and created Mickey Mouse.
It's just, it's one of those classic stories that we often hear where you have to have a great loss or a great defeat in order to then turn around and turn the next step into a great triumph.
Yeah.
I think it's a wonderful metaphor for life, and the book is just so tremendous. You talk about the origins and reacquiring the rights, the preservation. It's quite extraordinary. Talk about how Oswald came back into the Disney fold.
Well, really, you have to give credit to Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, and Diane Disney Miller, Walt's daughter. They were the heroes here who stepped up and helped to repatriate those original 26 Oswald cartoons that Walt Disney and his team of artists at the Hyperion Studio created back in the 1920s. And thanks to them, getting those back really helps to fill in a couple of year span of the Walt Disney Company history.
Oh, it's tremendous. And there are Oswald shorts that are lost. You talk about them extensively in the book.
Correct.
We have surviving sketches and artwork and other aspects of them, but otherwise they're completely gone. We have no way of recovering them unless they turn up in someone's basement somewhere. Is that it?
Yeah, that's correct. When the company first acquired the rights to these 26 back to Disney, there was only, I believe, 6 or 7 actual film prints of some of the Oswald cartoons, and then they were able to gather another 6 or 7 for a total of 13 that they actually had film prints of 13 of the 26 titles. That meant 13 titles were missing or lost to time. And when I got involved with it, I helped to locate, along with David Gerstein, who's a friend and colleague, we actually located an additional 6 titles that had been lost, and we found those scattered around the world. And there's still 7 titles missing, although I will tease everybody and say we've actually found one of those 7. We've located it. We don't have a copy of it yet, but we've located it, which is very exciting.
Wow, that's tremendous. And one of the things that is also interesting to me is how involved Friz Freleng was in animating these, and I started to think, is there a little bit of Oswald that found its way into Bugs Bunny as well?
I would not argue that point, because when you look at the early animation, whether it's Oswald or the early Mickeys, the black and white Mickey Mouses, or Felix the Cat, Crazy Cat, were some of those popular animated shows in the 20s and early 30s. Those really have some wonderful aspects to them as far as how the animation was utilized, and they really took advantage of being able to dismember cartoon characters and put them back together, distort their shapes, really stretch limbs, and do really kind of fun things. And I think you see a lot of that in some of those later Warner Brother cartoons, where they really go wild, and Tex Avery comes to mind with the wild Tex Avery takes, jaws dropping to the ground and eyes popping out of the head, and all of those types of things. And that's really what makes the medium of animation so much fun.
If we had to describe for someone who's never seen an Oswald cartoon, how would you? I mean, we all, Mickey Mouse is easy to describe. Bugs Bunny, Droopy, these iconic figures. How would you characterize Oswald for someone who's never been exposed?
Well, as far as the describing how Oswald looks, Oswald, his construction is very much like the early Mickey Mouse. He's constructed with circular shapes, and if you were to take the early Mickey Mouse and the Oswald and put them side by side, you're essentially just squashing down Oswald's ears into, instead of elongated shapes, into round shapes. They're both wearing pants. But I think with Oswald, he's a little bit more mischievous. He's a little bit wilder. He does, I think, some wilder things than Mickey did in his later cartoons. If you look at those early Mickey Mouse cartoons, there's a lot of gags and things in there that are similar to what was in some of those early Oswald cartoons.
And how central was the switch from silent to sound, from the silence to the talkies at this time? Because when we think of something like Snow White, for example, Snow White is a legendary film of the sound era. It's very much a sound film with the songs and the sound mix and the sound effects. But in 1927-28, we're in a very, very different technological moment. How does that impact or find its way in the animation?
Well, I think that, you have to recognize that Walt was always a forward-looking individual, and that became very evident throughout his career and how he built the Walt Disney Company and the Disneyland Park and all of these things. He never liked to repeat himself. So, here you got this guy who gets dealt this, devastating loss. He loses the contract to Oswald. He sets out to create Mickey Mouse, and he absolutely grabs onto this new technology, synchronized sound, and puts it to one of those first three Mickey Mouse cartoons. And when Steamboat Willie premiered with the sound to it, it brought the house down, and It was a huge success for him. And ultimately, Mickey quickly eclipsed the other popular animated characters of the day, including Oswald. And Oswald eventually disappeared from the screens by 1938.
Yeah.
So, I sit there and look at the fact that when you add synchronized sound to an animated film, what you're doing is really adding a supporting character in my mind. The music and sound effects and those types of things really support the screen action in animation and really help make it a more immersive, enjoyable experience.
The thing that I saw, I've been looking at the book consistently for the past several days since they sent it to us, and you have so many photographs here of the actual sketches, and it's such a wonderful look into the mind of the animators. There's even, I'm looking here on one page where there's a sketch and it's completely scribbled out, as though they just thought, no, that's not going to work at all. And it's such an interesting peek inside of what was done before they had tablets and computers, and it had to all be done by hand. The concept, the animation, the execution, the fine drawing, all of that. How much of an effort was it on your part to just mine through all of this material and kind of go over it? It just seems like there's a tremendous amount of material here.
Yeah, and this type of undertaking for this sort of book is really a team effort, and you really as the author, I'm not sitting in a room by myself and I come out 2 years later with a manuscript. It really it revolved around reaching out to a lot of different people. There was material at the Walt Disney Archives. There was animation drawings that survived, including animation for some of the missing cartoons that's at the Animation Research Library at Disney. There was posters at auction houses. There were collectors that had material. There was some material up at the Walt Disney Family Museum in the Bay Area. There was a lot of material sort of scattered around, and it was really about trying to bring all of that material together and aggregate it into this one book, because this is really the only volume there is on Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. And we wanted it to be as extensive as we could make it, and also put as much in the way of visuals into it as we could. And in fact, there's some examples where we'll have a story sketch page on one side, and then we have matching film frames on the other side of the page. And you can see how the story sketch translated to the actual animation. And that really speaks to how the whole process of creating these films worked. And you have to also understand that they were doing story sketch pages in the 1920s. They hadn't really developed the storyboarding process that we know of today.
Right.
Where you're using, sort of 5x7 sheets of paper, or now, they're using a Cintiq tablet. But essentially doing the same sort of aspect ratio drawings that go up onto a board or are projected now onto a wall. And, that process, that whole storyboarding process was developed at the Disney Studios in the early 1930s.
It's tremendous. I mean, you really do feel, going through the book, especially if if anyone who has the 2007 DVD of Oswald shorts, you can watch those, and then you can come to this book, and you're suddenly filled with a much richer appreciation for the effort that went into it when you realize exactly what you just said, which is that they're kind of inventing the animation process from scratch in many respects. There isn't, and unless I'm wrong, I mean, there's prior to Oswald, you've got Winsor McKay, maybe some Felix the Cat, but there isn't much by way of mainstream animation that the process is drawing on, is there?
Well, the biggest competitor for Disney in the 1920s was essentially the Fleischer Studios and Pat Sullivan Studios, who were doing the Felix the Cat cartoons. And, it was interesting. If you look at the Fleischer Studios, they were doing Out of the Inkwell series with Coco.
Oh, that's right.
And their premise was they were taking a cartoon character and putting the cartoon character in the live-action world. And Walt sort of did a twist on that, and he wanted to put a live character, Alice, into an animated world. And so that was sort of differentiated his series, the Alice comedy series, from the Out of the Inkwell, Coco the Clown stuff that Fleischer was doing. But the whole industry itself was a fledgling industry. They were all inventing it, and they were coming up with ways of doing things. It's interesting that, later on Disney would develop the multiplane camera, And the Fleischer brothers had a similar type of thing, but they had a horizontal camera that they hung animation against glass, and behind the glass they had 3D sets. So everybody was experimenting. I think it was a very exciting time in the animation industry because they were all figuring it out. They were all coming up with new ways of doing things and creating visual images that, sort of struck people as, gee, how did they do that? And so it was a lot of fun being able to dig into some of that. One of the other things that we were able to put into the book were some of the surviving Western Union telegrams between Walt and his producer, Charles Mintz.
Right.
And there's one example of a telegram he gets from Mintz, who's not very happy with the poor Papa. And he's kind of critical of the first Oswald cartoon that they created. And the back side of that telegram, Walt had written in pencil his response back to Mintz, which is just these are historical artifacts that are just really wonderful to be able to look at.
It's just really, it's a tremendous book, and it's a wonderful companion, especially for anyone who already has the DVD. It's so wonderful. Last question then before I let you go. If you had to pick one or two favorite Oswald shorts that just really resonate with you and define that moment, define the character, that just are so representative, what would those be?
For me, I immediately, as you were asking that question, I flashed on Trolley Troubles, which was really it was the second Oswald cartoon they created, but it was the first one that was released to the public, and it was an instant success. And it's just a very funny, fresh cartoon as far as I'm concerned. There's a wonderful gag in there where the trolley is out of control. It's racing down a hill, and Oswald is sitting there praying, and then at one point he pulls his foot off, and he kisses his foot, and he rubs it on his head, the Lucky Rabbit's foot. He rubs on his head, and then he puts it back on his leg. And it's just, every time I see it, I just laugh when I view that. It's a funny gag, and it's representative of that anything goes kind of animation. You can make a character do anything. You can bring in props from no place and lose props when you're done with them. It's just really hilarious and fun animation to watch.
David Bossert, thank you so much for speaking with us today. The book is Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, The Search for the Lost Disney Cartoons from Disney Publishing. It is a wonderful, wonderful book, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. Thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
You bet. Okay, bye-bye.
And that is it for our week. We will be back next week. Keep your fingers crossed. Let's see if Mark is still with us. We'll see you then.